Friends, will you pray with me? And as you feel so familiar and comfortable, I invite you to join in the second time through. Let the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in thy sight, O God. Let the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in thy sight, O God. Amen. Sometime during my childhood, there was a movie that came out on the idea of it being Christmas every day. Like there was a kid who wished, I wish it could be Christmas every day, and then something happened, and then it became Christmas every day. And I think there was actually like a country song that then joined along, and if it were Christmas every day. And there's this idea that if it were Christmas every day, then the sort of cheer and generosity of Christmas time would be every day of the year and not just on December 25th. I have never heard anyone express the same thing about Easter. And yet, imagine the world if we did act like if it was Easter every day. If we celebrated resurrection and there was this overwhelming joy, and we proclaimed every day that death has no power. On Friday, President Biden proclaimed in it, one of those very official sort of standard proclamations that today, March 31st, 2024, was to be the Transgender Day of Visibility. This is something that has been on this date for quite a few years now. It was really just a formal proclamation, but there were many people who took issue with this proclamation, being that March 31st also Easter lands on that day this year as well, and that should be the focus of everything. But honestly, and I had forgotten until very recently actually that Transgender Day of Visibility was the same day as Easter, I think it's a perfect match for the Easter celebration. Trans Day of Visibility is a refusal to be made invisible, to be silenced, to be made extinct. It is a celebration of transformation and truth. It is intentional joy. On that first morning after Jesus' death, that first morning after the Sabbath when they are going to the tomb, the grief is palpable. This dream that they have been sharing and telling through generation after generation of the Messiah, the Christ, the one who is to come to free them all from oppression, from empire, to take the place of the King David in their stories, to come and again raise up the people of God. That dream was crucified. What hope did they have for joy in that moment? What right would they have in the eyes of that empire who had killed him for joy? And yet, that morning, there was joy. Fear, too, Matthew tells us. Yes, fear and great joy. Although twice it says in this passage, do not be afraid. We often acknowledge the fragility of fear and of grief, how tender those emotions are. But joy is tender as well. Brene Brown says, when we feel joy, it is a place of incredible vulnerability. Its beauty and fragility and deep gratitude and impermanence all wrapped up in one experience. In this morning's poem by Wendell Berry, we are in a forest surrounded by destruction and brokenness, much like the world. And so feeling joy is like being a violet, a trillium, a tiny filament of fungi, a luminous strand on a spider's web, a tiny maple seed cracking open to reveal a new shoot. We are aware of our fragility and impermanence. Our joy will not stay forever. Our bodies will someday meet the same end as the fallen trees, returning to the earth from which they came. This poem is actually a different one than I had originally planned on reading this Sunday earlier in Lent in the schedule of Berry poems. For those of you who were following along with our Lenten devotional, this is one of the original one in the list of first. This Easter Sunday was slightly different. But then I read this one, and given the weather last week, it seemed appropriate to start with a poem that starts out, after ice storm and windstorm. Just perfect. But also because of that line that just stopped me in my tracks when I was reading it. Made no doubt by force, the world is saved by tenderness. But this is not something that comes easy to most of us, this vulnerability of joy, of resistance and of subverting empire, of salvific tenderness. We try to stay tough, hard, angry even in the face of all the injustice and despair in the world. So then what to do to try to capture this joy, to be vulnerable in this moment? Well, it's the same way you get to Carnegie Hall. Practice. I was recently reading something about the forming of habits and how often people will say, oh, it's 21 days to form a habit, or however many days, 90 days, 67 days to form a habit. You know, there's always those clickbait articles, form a habit in this many days. But the article talked about how it depends on how often you do the thing. Something done hourly is probably going to turn into a habit a lot quicker than something you do once a month, or maybe once a year. If we practice resurrection on Easter only, well, it's going to take us a darn long time to get it right. So then we go back to this idea of Easter every day. And okay, one more Berry poem. Maybe some of you all are tired of Wendell Berry. Maybe some of you love it. I promise we're not going into Easter and spending all of Easter with Wendell Berry, but one more. And it is a poem that I read at last year's Easter sunrise service. It's called Manifesto, the Mad Farmer Liberation Front. Love the quick profit, the annual raise, vacation with pay. Want more of everything ready-made. Be afraid to know your neighbors and to die. And you will have a window in your head. Not even your future will be a mystery anymore. Your mind will be punched in a card and shut away in a little drawer. When they want you to buy something, they will call you. When they want you to die for profit, they will let you know. So, friends, every day, do something that won't compute. Love the Lord. Love the world. Work for nothing. Take all that you have and be poor. Love someone who does not deserve it. Denounce the government and embrace the flag. Hope to live in that free public for which it stands. Give your approval to all you cannot understand. Praise ignorance for what man has not encountered, he has not destroyed. Ask the questions that have no answers. Invest in the millennium. Plant sequoias. Say that your main crop is the forest that you did not plant, that you will not live to harvest. Say that the leaves are harvested when they have rotted into the mold. Call that profit. Prophesy such returns. Put your faith in the 2 inches of humus that will build under the trees every 1,000 years. Listen to carrion. Put your ear close and hear the faint chattering of the songs that are to come. Expect the end of the world. Laugh. Laughter is immeasurable. Be joyful, though you have considered all the facts. So long as women do not go cheap for power, please women more than men. Ask yourself, will this satisfy a woman satisfied to bear a child? Will this disturb the sleep of a woman near giving birth? Go with your love to the fields. Lie easy in the shade. Rest your head in her lap. Swear allegiance to what is nighest your thoughts. As soon as the generals and the politicos can predict the motions of your mind, lose it. Leave it as a sign to mark the false trail, the way you didn't go. Be like the fox who makes more tracks than necessary, some in the wrong direction. Practice resurrection. If you notice on our hymn booklet and the front of our bulletin, the painting there, the print of the painting, the words are a little bit hard to read, but it says, practice resurrection. And this painting was created by an artist based on this poem. And it is this poem which then will be the basis of our theme for the coming 50 days. And hopefully then to create a habit for the rest of our lives of practicing resurrection. This is where we will practice proclaiming to the forces of death and hate, with all of our siblings on the margins. We will proclaim that you will not kill our joy, that our alleluias will not be silenced, even under threat of death or pushed to deny our very right to exist. Christ is risen. Love wins. Every day. Alleluia and amen.